Hello, hello. Let's go ahead and get started here. Did promise to try to start promptly right at 7, and already missing out on my promise here, and probably not going to be the last one. My name is John Howard. I'm the business liaison of the Davis Island Civic Association, and like many of you probably here, my house and my office both got flooded. And it's the first time I've ever been in this situation. And if you're like me, you got to find all the answers to something. And every question that I got answered led to more questions. And it was so frustrating. And then once I thought I had it figured out, my wife went on to the DI Mafia, or the DI Moms Facebook group, and she said, John, what about this? And I'm like, that sounds like a great thing. Let me dive into it. And then that was great. Or more times than not, maybe that wasn't the best advice that you got on the message board on the Nextdoor app or on the Facebook group. And so it just led me down this path of discovery. And my good friend Chris Bentley here, he also got flooded. And him and I, every day, we would say, hey, listen, like, not only do we have to deal with our house being flooded or taking care of our spouses and our kids, but then somehow we're also supposed to work and figure all this out. So I said we would take shifts. Hey, call these two people, see what you get. And we just divided and conquered, and we got a lot of great information. And then I started sharing it on my personal Facebook page, and I found really quickly that people are starving for this type of information, accurate information on here. And so that's what the point of this town hall is. On Monday, I was a panelist on the Hernando County Beach panel, and they had a professional moderator, and I was listening to her, and I was like, she's really good. I'm like, I apologize in advance. I'm not going to be as good as that moderator here, but I'm going to do my best on here. And so one of the couple of ground rules, if we could, is that our panelists here could be anywhere else tonight, but they chose to come here today to help us get the answers that we need. We have people from the city of Tampa. We have people from Hillsborough County. We have experts in their fields of public adjusters, architects, builders, real estate, developers. And so hopefully, and we'll get to questions at the end, but we're going to have a presentation from the city of Tampa. We're going to have a quick presentation from the Hillsborough County property appraisers. And then for everyone, it looks like some people here didn't RSVP on the Eventbrite because we had enough chairs. So I apologize for people understanding, and if we could try to scoot in, because we do have some chairs here. But in that Eventbrite, we also had questions that you could answer. And those questions will definitely be asked tonight. And then after we go through the panelists, we should have about 45 minutes for questions and answers on here. So I know like JC with the city of Tampa going over the 50% rule and going over what needs a permit, you probably have a lot of quick questions for them. We ask that you hold it for the question and answer part. And if you have a very specific question, like this guy in Hernando County had a boathouse that might be condemned, and what can this, and this, the answer is probably going to, it depends. But our goal is to avoid that it depends questions and give you the information that you need. Chris, you got anything to add? I know I had it took over.
No, I just want to mimic what John's saying, and I do want to thank all the panelists again because it just shows us how much of a community we really are, right? We all live on Davis Islands. We have issues, and the city and all these representatives are coming out as a community to help answer each other's questions. So I do hopeful that you all learn a lot today, and we can help you through this difficult process.
All right, so JC, I say we just get right into it. If we can get JC's presentation up on explain the permitting process requirements. So you got to get it over.
Hello? All right.
Whatever you feel comfortable with, walk around, sit, whatever you need.
I'm a walker, so I'm going to try to go through this as best I can. All right. Good evening. JC Hutchinson, building official, City of Tampa. Really, based off of the virtual town hall we had last Friday, I really just kind of want to go over the things that you need that require a permit, what doesn't require a permit, certain things, fees that we waive, just so you guys understand what you need and don't need. So we're going to try to go through that. I will touch on the substantial damage rule, try to explain it as best I can. Almost all of you are in a case-by-case basis based off of your location and the value of your home. So I may not be able to answer everybody's questions up here, but I'll try my best. So, all right, we can go ahead and get started. So these 4 things at any time in the Florida Building Code do not require a permit. So if you lost some shingles or something on the top of your house that's less than 500 square feet, you don't need a permit ever. Like, this is not, these aren't new things. This is what's already here. If you're doing any painting, tiling, cabinetry, countertops.
This is on our website, so you don't have to take pictures.
Got the video, everything
We have
on those.
all of this information available to you, as well as interactive club maps and all sorts of things. So please, if you just want to put your phones down and engage in what's going on, we're happy to share that with you. Sorry, I saw all these phones just pile up.
Hey, when you say it's on our website, I went to our
Yeah,
I went to ourwebsite.com and I couldn't find it.
We will give you that address.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
So repairs of soffits at the edge of your roof, any damage there, and any fence repair and replacement. You don't need a permit. You didn't need a permit before, you don't need a permit now. You've never heard of Florida Building Code. Those things you can do right now, not requiring a permit. So we can go to the next one. These are two specific things that we did add as a waiver under the mayor's emergency order. A lot of people obviously here dealing with a lot of flood damage. So I did leave that flood cut at 2 feet above finished grade. You can do that, and that's currently waived without a permit. Technically, that would be an alterations permit. Don't want to get too technical, but by the time you go up 2 feet, you're in electrical sockets and stuff like that. But understanding you're trying to get that stuff out of your house. So up to 2 feet above grade, you don't need a permit. And also to secure your property. If you're putting a door frame and your door got rotted out, you need to replace like for like. As long as you're not making it structurally bigger, you're just being able to get those doors back in. You go into Home Depot, just replace the door like for like in the same frame. You also don't need a permit. So that is specifically right now while we're under the emergency order. Want to emphasize this. The city is allowing free permits. Permits are free. When you go through the documentation, we set it up now in the system where you go through a seller, and if you go in and there's a toggle there, and it says, is the permit relating to repairs to a major storm in which the state, the state of emergency? If you click yes, it will waive the fee. So you don't have to call us in to say, hey, let me call, I have a concern on this property. You don't have to keep explaining that story to us, unfortunately. If you go through the system, if you click that, you click it to yes, it will waive the fee. So, and then we, on the back side, we have post-storm damage assessment software, so we can kind of catch people. If they're, somewhere in New Tampa wanting to get a free fee and didn't do anything, we have checks and balances to check that. Next slide. So this is one of the ones. So ideally, if you're at your house, this is our Q Up Tampa. I have a few slides in the back as well as our QR code. You can set up a virtual meeting with our plan review staff and our client facilitator staff if you have questions. So as you go through that, we set them up in 30-minute slots, 30-minute intervals. Literally, it's like a FaceTime call with us. We set it up. We show you. You can show us your facility. You can show us your house, your bedroom, your kitchen, whatever. Say, hey, what kind of permit do I need to get? I'm looking at this. And the client facilitator team or the plan review team can get back with you, set that appointment, meet with you, and walk you through the process. Once again, telling you that it's free. We want to make sure this stuff is put back correctly. So there's no fee from the city for these trade permits. So roof repair, if it's larger than 500 square feet, if you needed to do a hot water heater change out, your AC system, your condenser needs to get changed out, and any electrical related activities can be pulled under a trade permit. A part of that, if you want to do the work yourself, you can do an owner-builder permit. An owner-builder permit allows you to do the work yourself if you're managing the job on the site. Now, if you sign a waiver, state statute, that you understand those responsibilities, but that is an avenue if you want to choose to do the work yourself. Next slide. So, when we start to get into a little bit more structural, that's when we ask for a building alterations permit. So it's a BLD alterations permit. So you have two phases in that, whether if it's alteration permit, where roof, wall, if any of you got truss damage, tree fell on your home, that kind of stuff, you're getting kind of out of the trades, you're getting more into a structural issue, and that's going to need a building alterations permit. So you have two different ways you can do that. Or, if it's worst case scenario, and you're just saying, hey, I need to demo the whole property, that's also a permit, that's also waived. Once again, all of those permits are up and active right now. You just select a section for storm damage, and it'll waive the fee. It'll be free as long as the mayor's emergency order is going. So as long as that goes, we will continue to keep it free. Right now, we've issued, since the storm over the last month, we've issued almost 300 permits, 294 permits. Most of them have been in the trades, kind of electrical, mechanical, plumbing kind of situation. We've had one or two demos, but most of it's people are trying to kind of get back into their homes and the properties. So, why get a permit? Because we're saying, hey, permit. But safety assurance. Once again, we want to make sure what you're doing is code compliant. You know, if you do choose to do the work, that's fine. Our inspector will come out and say, maybe you don't need to do that, or where's that ground again? They may ask you some questions to make sure that's being done correctly, because we want to make sure that work is done correctly. Code compliance, we want to make sure that you're safe. You're doing this stuff, if you choose to do it yourself, to make sure it's being done the right way. Insurance claims, as this goes on, the insurance is going to ask, hey, these modifications were made to your house. Where are the permits for these said modifications? You'll have a permit. Property value protection. Obviously, protecting you and your neighbors. If you do the stuff right, then you're expecting your neighbor and everybody adjacent to you to also be doing the right thing. And then legal requirements, especially now as of October 1, the new statute that you have to declare that you had flood damage to your property. So ideally, once again, that's another thing they're going to ask, hey, what repairs were made and what was done. You can go back and say, hey, the city of Tampa approved my permit, I have this documentation, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Next. Ooh, all right, 50% rule. I'm going to try to explain this the best I can. I have my floodplain manager here to make big googly eyes if I start getting stuff wrong. So I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. All right, so we want to kind of step all the way at the top. NFIP is what administers the National Flood Insurance Program. Obviously on Davis Islands, you guys are in flood, so there's no, if you're not in flood, the whole island is in flood. So all this will apply. After that, we're a part of what's called the community rating system. Under that community rating system is what gets you your discount for your flood insurance. And so based off of us, right now we're at a 5, which gets us 25% off. So obviously the better and the more stringent things we add, the more discount you get. So once again, that's why we're very imperative on the substantial damage, substantial improvement, having that information. We just had FEMA come through and do an audit. They do an audit every year on our parcels, and we never know where they're going to pick. Well, obviously this year we'll know where they're going to pick because of the storms. So we know ideally these areas, Palmetto Beach, certain areas that are getting reconstructed, they're going to want to see all the documentation. So that's why we're kind of so adamant on the substantial damage, substantial improvement. So I'm speaking specifically for Tampa, because I know some people are kind of live streaming or whatever. This is only for Tampa. Nellis has a different rule. Hillsborough County has different rules. So I'm only speaking for City of Tampa and how we assess this. So I want to go to the next slide. The next slide is where we're at is substantial damage. Our documentation online says substantial improvements. Unfortunately, we all know that this was not something that we intended to happen. So ideally, it says substantial improvement is what the form says, but what we're really looking at is substantial damage and where that falls. So the damage to any ordinance sustained by a structure whereby the cost of restoring the structure to before damage condition would equal or exceed 50% of the market value of the structure before the damage occurred. So this definition is in the Florida Building Code as well as FEMA. So like I said, we're not adding anything extra to it. Substantial damage form, there was a few in the back. We've got some back there, so we're going through that. So for you all, like substantial damage, when I make this presentation to the general public, if you're not in a flood zone, you do not have to fill out the substantial damage information. But in this situation, everybody on Davis Island is in the flood, so you will have to submit, once you do a BLD, kind of what we're trying to do is to help keep that cost as low as we can. Our hope is to try to see that if your cost is very minimal, that A, doesn't require a permit, or it can be done through a trade permit. We're kind of trying to keep you from getting into that BLD level, because once we get all that information and we start calculating, start adding all that up, it may not be in your favor. You see what I'm saying? So ideally, that's why we wanted the free permits. That's why we wanted to push a lot of the trades and let you know what's exempt so you can understand what does or doesn't need to be accounted for. All right. So if you want to specifically know about your flood information, this is the QR code to our Forerunner, tampa.gov/floodinfo. It's where our actual flood maps are. So you can go there, find out exactly your height. You can find out based off of your parcel. You can also find out where your depreciated value is on the website as well. You click on your parcel, it'll walk you right down, just scroll down to the bottom, it'll show you where that depreciated value is. I'll get into that in a second. Next slide. So, the way the city of Tampa does it, we estimate the depreciated market value based on the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser site on the structure, not the land, the structure. So that number is what we have on our Forerunner site. When you get the information, this white and gray sheet is your substantial damage form. You only fill out the white part. City staff does the valuation in the gray. Just simple stuff, your owner name, put your information in, your property address. Now we're asking when you guys do this to fill it out and put check other, because we know those is where our storm stuff is going to go. So when you get this form, you check other, you check the box other. So as we're looking at it, to find out your total construction cost, you do the square foot of the construction area. So when we talk about construction area, it's everything that's in that area. So it's not counting the plumbing, plus the mechanical, plus the electrical. We're not adding all those things together. It's based off a square foot number. Now, for FEMA, we kind of get in trouble because we use a very low number on purpose, because that's the intent. We want to keep you in these homes, so we use the lowest number we can use, which is $64.85 per square feet. So different cities do it differently. Other ones allow you to use different. You can get an appraiser or get something from everybody else. FEMA kind of doesn't like that. They want everybody to be standardized under the same number. So we chose to use the lowest number at the bottom to try to be able to balance that as best we can. So wherever work that you're doing in your house, when you're doing the substantial damage form, it would be times that $64.85 per square foot. And the hope is those two numbers don't go over the 60% of the depreciated value, which doesn't match the 50% rule. I know numbers 50 and 60 are not the same. But what we're trying to do is try to be as consistent as we can. We actually just talked with the property appraiser before, so there may be some adjusting there. So we're going to make sure we get you guys the right information here to clear that up. So I'll let him kind of speak on what they have on their site, because we'll take whatever number they give us. So the property appraiser gives us this number, that's the number we will then use. So the way our ordinance is written, it is 60%. But there's some numbers that have been changing, so that's why we do the evaluation. We'll let you know if you're getting close. That's once again why we ask you to come in to get a permit, so we can talk you through some of this, because some of the things you maybe do as a trade permit, some of the things you don't need a permit from us at all, some of the things, you may be able to do it in a phase, to kind of keep you from either having to raise or do anything else. So we want to be able to talk to you to try to give you all the options we can give you.
JC,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. So if I get a bid, like my depreciated value is $333,000 on my structure.
Yep.
So I go on the Hillsborough County Property site. They have a nice FEMA calculator. It says I can go up to $200,000.
Okay.
All right. I get a quote from a contractor that says it's going to cost $205,000 to repair my home.
Mm-hmm.
But the city of Tampa only cares about if it's 1,500 square feet times that's $64.85.
Correct.
My contractor is going to submit paperwork to you that's going to be $97,275. So in reality, I'm paying my contractor $205, but the city of Tampa only cares about that $97,000. So I am in compliance.
That's correct.
Even though my number is actually higher than
That's
that.
correct.
And that, can I just add to that a minute? So, what was happening in the past was that we would take the quote from the contractor. This was back before the 6485, and a house would be getting a full kitchen, they'd be getting windows replaced. This is not damage, this was a regular permit for improvement. And the contractor would have on there, well, the windows are $5 a piece. And the cabinets are gonna be $20, whatever it was. And we knew that the work wasn't going to be getting done for that amount of money. The 6485 is a blended standardization of the average cost of work per the square foot. So what you just said, which you got a quote from a contractor for $200,000, it doesn't matter. The city is going to run it based on the area that is having improvement or that is being repaired at a per square foot foot number. So we may give you the 6485, and that may tell you you can go up to X amount before you get to that 50%. And it's 50% only if you're using a private appraisal of the structure. Okay, that's one thing JC didn't mention. I want to talk about that for a minute. The 60% is of the depreciated value of what's on the property appraiser's office of the structure. That's the other thing. We've had people come in and say, my property is worth $1.9 million. Your property as a whole, that is land plus structure, right? You could put it on the market for $2 million. I had someone come in from the islands. They bought their house in 80 for $350,000. The market value on the property appraiser's office says it's $1.8 million. The depreciated value of the structure only, it's not the whole entire package of what you own, is listed at $192,000. That means they can only make improvements up to 60% of the 192. Okay? So that is where the standardization of the $64.85, which is substantially lower than what FEMA would like us to use, but we feel is most appropriate for our community, lets you do work and work to stay under the 50% if you're not intending to demolish and elevate your home. Which is once you go over the 50%, the 60%, that's where you're considered substantial damage. If you can't repair under that 60% of the depreciated value, then you are considered substantially damaged and you have to then meet code. So I think that's where some people are like, but my property, your property in our minds is everything that's on the property, right? All the improvements. But in the terms of this application, it is structure only.
Thank you.
And another part of this, which is a part of the emergency order as well. So if somebody happened to do work within a year, normally we do a year look back, and it's compounded on this. We're waiving the year look back. So that allows you, we're looking strictly for the damage that has happened right now. We're not looking a year in the past. We'll get beat up by FEMA later, but we'll take those loans. But right now, we're looking at the damage of the work that you need to do that's getting done. So that year look back doesn't count against you. So if you remodeled your kitchen or you redid something around your house in the last year, technically we use that and this number to get you the depreciated value, which would definitely put a lot of people against the cap. So that 1 year look back is going away while the emergency order is in place to allow you to be able to, we're assessing directly for the damage that has happened according to the storm.
Well, that's awesome because a lot of other counties have a 5-year look back and they're not waiving that. And so that's, you guys are really helping us out.
Well, we took some heat for that. I just want to say that. But if you just finished your dream kitchen on September 26th and along came the storm and you had worked, to make that dream kitchen a reality, and now right away, and you were already at 48% or 58%, you don't have any wiggle room to be able now to react to what has happened at your home. So we had a call with FEMA after Helene and before Milton, and we said, we are going to suspend the 1 year look back for those people who are pulling permits in relation to storm damage.
So hopefully we don't get to this, but ideally, if we get to this, those are kind of what the options are to stay compliant with the NFIP. You either have to raise your structure to be above the design flood, or you choose to demolish. So we hope not to get here. That's why I kind of loaded all that stuff in the front to give you all the options to not put you in this situation. So ideally, we just want to work with you, and hopefully we can get it done. All right, so kind of the big one. Why is this important? We get those, FEMA is going to audit. We got hit by 2 storms. They're going to audit, and they are going to be looking for this documentation. So we have to have the substantial damage damage documentation on all of these permits if it reaches a BLD level. If it's a BLD permit, we have to have the information. Obviously, protecting property and lives, you know, we talk about it, you know, the emotion, we understand this is you guys' homes, we get it, you know, but unfortunately, we're having to kind of look also for the greater good, understanding that if we don't do this, then our flood, we don't get the discounts on our flood insurance. So it's just trying to find that balance. Obviously, access to federal funding. They're going to ask you, make sure if you're doing these repairs or if you're applying for grants, are you compliant? Are you at the level that you need to be at? Reducing long-term costs, obviously with tying in that with the community resilience. You know, Dave has been strong on this hill for a long time, that it wasn't a matter of if, but when. And we're at when. And now, could it happen again? Sure. And we want to be as prepared as we can. Some of the people, you know, you kind of notice you have some neighbors that kind of may have some elevated houses, and, you know, because we enforce those additional things on those properties, you know, they had to, you know, they had less damage, or they didn't have to do as much because they were high, they were elevated. So we understand. But if we don't do this, then like we lose our insurance rating. NFIP drops us even lower. We get in trouble with repetitive flood loss from FEMA. So when you do apply for these things, it's the city enforcing these repetitive, and we would say no. Our discount keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. So we want to be able to do what we can. Lastly, I keep seeing all the hands. I feel bad. They told me to just go through it, and then we'll get to the questions. So I've seen you. I'm not ignoring you, but I'm just trying to stay on.
That's my bad.
So the two things here, people have asked about trees. Once again, telling you it's free. We just need to be able to document the information that if the tree has fallen, if it's already down, do what you need to do, get it to the street. It's down. It's damaged. It is what it is. Can't do anything about it. Now, if it's damaged, however, you either have to get the statute on residential property if it's unacceptable risk. You can have an arborist, you can provide the documentation, and you can have it removed. Or you can call the city, TRE permit, free, again, free. City arborist goes out and says, hey, okay, that branch can be removed, this needs to be pruned, or if you want to remove it. So if the tree is fallen, it's already uprooted, it's already on its side, it's already over, chop it up, take it to the street, not ask for a permit. If it's damaged and you want to prune it back or do something else to it or potentially remove it, call us, free permit, we'll go out and evaluate it, let you know what you need to do. All right, lastly, I think I just have our contact information, csdhealth@tampagov.net. Our phone number, 813-274-3100, option 1, takes you to our call center. Like I said, you can call in and still schedule virtual appointments. Come see us in person. We want to be able to help. This is our normal office hours, so nothing different there. But we just want to be able to help. Like I said, we wanted to take that barrier out for adding a fee for a permit to just say, hey, just come get the information. I'm pretty sure all my handouts are probably gone because I didn't know how many people were coming. But there were some handouts in the back. I've got a few up here. We can put the QR codes back up if you want to scan and get the information as well, and we can do it that way. So I guess we'll wait to the end.
Yeah, wait to the end of the questions.
I just wanted to add, so we did this presentation in a virtual town hall last Friday. It was recorded. It was JC. It was also Bob Henriquez, the property appraiser, and it was a FEMA representative. And that is also available on our website. tampagov.net/hurricane should get you to all of this information. So if anything JC went over tonight, you're like, oh, what did he say? But there is an audio and video presentation that is available of this same information. So we really want to help, and we really want to build back a resilient community. So, and like JC said, the queue up option, if you're standing in your home and you're like, I don't know what to do, like, I'm not sure what I need. The other thing he did not mention that I would like to take a moment to mention is we want to encourage you to ensure you're using licensed contractors. You can go to DBPR, you can look up your contractor. We want to ensure you're not paying them up front for all of the repairs that are being done, or giving substantially large deposits for that work without knowing that the work is going to get done. So right now, under the governor's executive order, contractors from other states may legally work in Florida. That is not something that is typical. It's opening up another group of contractors to come into the state to do the work because there is so much work to be done. So that same rule applies if they are from Georgia or from Tennessee. You can go on to their websites, check. They should be providing you with their proof of license and registration from that state before they're doing any work for you. And if you have any questions about any of that, CSD help, you can email us. We do have someone that responds to that, or you can call into us, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have. We understand this is seriously, a very emotional time. I was telling my friend here, Milton was only 28 days ago. 28 days. And in 28 days, we've come a substantially long way from where we were the morning we woke up after that storm. But we still have a really long way to go. And we want to partner with you and be here for you through that process to ensure that your homes are repaired safely and that the investments that you're making are good ones, and that we can know that you're in your home safely, and whoever is then getting that home after you also has a safe residence to be. So.
Well, thank you very much. So, everyone, round of applause for JC and Abby. The large majority of the questions that were submitted in advance had to do with the 50% rule in the ICC, and I think you guys did a great job explaining it. And of course, I know we will get back to it. We got to power through to our next presentation with the Hillsborough County Property Appraisers. And I know a lot of people, if you're like me, you got into your home before COVID, maybe you refinanced during COVID, and now you have a really affordable payment and a really low tax bill. And now you're dealing with the options of, should I renovate? I had to deal with the 50% rule, which seems way more relaxed here than any other jurisdiction in the Florida, which is awesome. But it's still costly. And the other option is tear down and rebuild. And my God, the taxes that come up due every year on it. And I have to get rid of my low interest rate and increase my mortgage balance. And how the heck do I afford that payment every month? And thankfully, we have the Hillsborough County Property Appraisers, Pat, the Chief Deputy here. And I did a really poor job introducing our panel. And I'll get back to that because we did have slides coming in beforehand on it. But Pat, thank you very much for your time. And we have the other presentation teed up here. This is not Bob, this is Pat.
We kind of look the same, but okay. What I'm going to do is just go through the whole process. What we can do is to help you with the property tax and the tax burden that you may have moving forward. The role of the property appraiser in the damage assessment is to assist local agencies, first of all, in working with the initial damage. We had a large team of our appraisers out, as well as with the county code and so forth. We were processing about 1,250 properties a day, working 12-hour days, trying to just get out into the community and find out where the damage was. We collect that information, and then we can provide some property tax relief as allowed by the Florida state statutes. And we also help with the 50% rule from FEMA, and I can explain that a little bit, but I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because you've already had an excellent explanation of it. So if we go to the next slide, please. I've got a whole pile of cards up here that you can take with you that has our email address, phone numbers, and everything else. If you call our office, you're going to get somebody that's going to pick up the phone and talk to you. And then we'll be able to try and process information that might help you when it comes to property tax. We can go to the next slide, please. Unfortunately, this is a woman in my neighborhood, 2 doors up from one of the guys in the office, and she left to go to safer ground, and during that night, her house burned to the ground. And this is one of our people that has stopped to just try and console her. It's a hard thing to do, all day long for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week to go up and see people's misery. And we have a heart for it, and we're sorry for what's happened to our jurisdiction. Please, next slide. So what we have, if you have an uninhabitable home, so if the property is uninhabitable for 30 days or more, you have the ability to file what is called a DR-465 form with us. What we do is take the information and the amount of time that you're out of your property at the end of the year, and then we go through a formula. We give that to the collector's office. You do still have to pay your property taxes. What it is a refund. Give you money back if you're not able to be in your property. So you can go on. It's called DR-465. You can get it from our office. You can go online and just type in DR-465 and it'll come up. It's from the Florida Department of Revenue. And but if you have any questions, just contact our office and we have those that we can provide to you.
Pat, real quick question.
Yes, sir.
If you are displaced and you're living at a family member's house or a friend's house, do you have to show proof of that, or what do you have to show to the property appraiser's
No,
office?
but going on with the next slide, they'll tie together. So one of the things we'd ask you to do is also file a damage assessment report with our office. What that does is it gives us the information that the property's been damaged. We ask you for some images, and for a lot of people I just say, look, just show me where the water line is, and we'll go from there, right? Because it's inundated the entire property. But at that point then, we understand the property's been damaged. We'll encourage you to file your DR-465 if you've been out for more than 30 days. But then on January 1, we're going to come back and look at the properties again. And the odds of a lot of your properties being done by January 1st is not good, right? You're not going to be there. So what's going to end up happening then at that point, the property is not developed to the final intent for which it was intended to be built. And so we will end up probably putting your property on for just a land value. We'll take the improvement off until such time it's completed and you can go back in. Now, having said that, you've already heard it mentioned already once in this meeting, most of your value is probably in your land and not in your improvement. So if you have a $1.6 million piece of property and the improvement's worth $300,000, we'll take the $300,000 off. But the land is still there, and the land is, in a lot of cases, when you're on the water, is the more valuable portion of your asset. So but that's what we will do. We'll look at it. Are you in the property? If you're not, and the property is not inhabitable, then what we're going to do is knock it down to the land value, and if you complete it through the year, fine. The next year, you'll come back and at that point, we'll add on the improvement. Now, having said that, when you look at these properties, right, it's going to take a long time, especially the woman from FEMA that was on the town hall meeting said that there's grants and there's monies that are out there that you can get, but I believe she said you couldn't even start work until almost 2 years from now if you're going to get the government to help fund that operation. I'm here to tell you that as long as you pull a permit, to start work on your home, within 5 years of the date of the event, you will not lose your homestead and your cap will stay the same. Okay? You have 5 years to pull a permit, not to have the house done, but just to pull it. You're protected with your homestead exemption. Now, as we move on from that then, if you decide that you are going to have to rebuild, and I've had calls from the island here about raising property, or some people that felt like they're going to have to rebuild, you can build up to 110% of the existing structure without changing your cap on your property for property taxes. So your capped amount would stay exactly the same. Now that deals with size, it doesn't deal with value, okay? Because if you have to rebuild your house and you have to rebuild it to code, right? First of all, you're going to have a foundation under it. Then you're going to have to put in the hurricane windows and the hurricane doors and everything else, and those things are all more expensive than what you may have now. That doesn't matter. As long as your square footage, as long as the heated area of your property doesn't exceed 110%, your cap will not be impacted at all. Okay? So in this example, we have a property that's 1,600 square feet. You can build up to 1,760 square feet and it won't impact your cap. Okay? At the same time, if you have a home that is less than 1,500 square feet, you can build up to 1,500 square feet and not impact the cap on your home. So from the homestead exemption side of things, we're not going to add anything more to your property as long as you stay within 110% or don't go greater than 1,500 square feet if you're smaller than that. Okay? If you do go larger than that, can I have the next slide, please? So this one's elevation. Was it back one more? Can we go back one slide, please? Thank you. Whoop, nope. Now forward one. Okay. That's the one we were on, wasn't it? Oh, it is new? Oh, good. This is about my third one of these today, so I apologize. I'm getting a little... Okay, so here's what happens. Let's say you can go up to 110%, so that's 1,760 square feet on the 1,600 square foot house. But you decide, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go to, 2170, right? I'm going to build it a little bigger. That's fine. You can build it bigger. What will happen is we will start the cap going above at 1,760. You still get that high without any change to your cap. So the difference then between the 1,760 and the 2170, the 410 square feet, is the only square footage amount that's going to be added onto your cap, not the total amount. And so if you're going to make that move, understand you can go up 10% in your size without causing any damage at all to your cap. If you decide that you're going to tear down and rebuild, that's fine. Everything that you do, as long as you stay within the same size, we will not change your cap on your property. Now, if you decide to sell then after you build it, the next person, that's a whole other story, right? It's going to reset then. And but for you as the property owner right now, we want to do whatever we can to help get you back in your property without causing heartache for you because of the property tax. Can we go to the next slide?
And Pat, real quick on
Yes,
that,
sir.
on what you just talked about, if you go in excess, you still have 5 years, up to 5 years to get that, or when's the time limit for the assessment?
The 110%?
If you decide in 2 years from now or 3 years from now to rebuild and build it new because of the impact that you had in the storm, is there a time limit that you have on when you can get for the tax assessment?
If that's the first time you're going through and you're redoing your property and you decide to let it sit for a while until you get the funds together, whatever, that's fine. As long as you're within 5 years to pull the permits, that's all that we need to know. Yes, ma'am.
So can you just clarify too that if you're elevating your structure, and it's unfinished or unconditioned space underneath, that does not count
Right.
toward the 110%?
Yes, ma'am. That's the slide right here.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So if you do have a situation, I've had people on the island tell me they want to elevate, and that's fine. We do not count the elevation, the raising it up as part of the information that's going to be applied towards the cap. I would tell you that Mr. Enriquez is kind of out on a limb on his own right there, because a lot of the other places are saying if you put a foundation under it to raise it up, that they're going to put that on top of the cap. We don't feel that's the right thing to do, right? As far as we're concerned, you're just putting a new foundation under your property to bring it up in elevation, and you can't finish it. You can't make it into a family room or something like that, because that knocks that out and makes you out of compliance with FEMA. So, but if you put in blowout walls and park cars under there, that's fine with us. we don't count that as anything that's going to go on top of the cap, right? We want people to elevate if you can. If you're in a flood hazard area and you have the ability to push it up. In fact, you may not remember, but last year, 2 years ago, the property appraisers introduced a bill asking for people to be able to raise their properties without damage, just go in and do it, and we wouldn't change the assessment. It failed, right? It was at 57%. You got to have 60% for it to pass. But we still believe in it, and we still think it's the right thing to do. Give people a chance to bring their property up out of the floodplain and secure themselves so they don't go through this again. So that's the whole purpose behind the 50% rule, is so that you can get yourself out of harm's way and create your structure such that you don't have to go through it again. Can I have the next slide, please? So I'm not gonna dwell on the 50% rule, just to tell you that there's different ways to get that number. One way is to hire an individual fee appraiser, a certified appraiser, to come in and value the property. Before you do that, I would ask them if they've ever done it before, because there's some unique attributes to what needs to be in that appraisal report. It's not just a normal report, so that you have the information you want going forward. There's also on our website, there's a FEMA 50% rule, and understand this is for the entire. Click on it, it will help you find your folio, then it will process the number, and it brings up 50%, and that is a different market value than if you go in and just look at your heated number in the material. Okay, I hate to be confusing about it, but that's just the reality. So you can use that tool. We've cleared that with the county floodplain administrator, and get an appraisal. See if it's better. I mean, this is partly doing your research and so forth to get the best number you can, to get the best deal you can. You do have to understand what damage has been done and what renovations you're going to make. That's all part of this as well, because as I've told people the process to go through, and they're like, well, I went in, but they told me I have to have plans and I have to know what I'm going to do, and that's true. You do. This is not a fast process, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be drawn out for a little bit. But if you're willing just to do a little bit of research on it, you'll come out on the other side, with a better property and more ready for some kind of a disaster. But I've had so many people call. I get 300 to 400 calls a day, and they want it to be done today. It just isn't going to happen. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. So be patient, and there's a lot of properties. Countywide, we're looking at almost 20,000 properties. Hillsborough County has 102,000 properties that are in an A or B flood zone. And a lot of them are out by Plant City in the northeast corners of the county. So there's a lot of people that have been damaged, and so we're trying. Can I have the next slide, please? That's what the page looks like. You just go and click on it, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Next slide, and it'll bring you up a letter that tells you what the full market value is of that improvement, the depreciated value of your improvement. And then it gives you the 50% amount, and it says it has to be, if it's here or higher, because it does include the 50% mark, then it's considered substantial damage to the property if you use that tool. And the next slide, please. Okay, so we've got our main contact number there, Storm Damage Hotline, which is the number that's manned through the day. Email, I will answer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you send a question to that bottom one. And I'll leave these cards back here. Everybody type one if you want. And please call, allow us to help you if we can. If we don't know the answer, then we promise to send you to the people that do. So thank you very much.
All right, so we got a couple prepared questions for you. One thing I want to reiterate for my wife listening back home is that it's not a fast process, and we have to be patient. Right? So the steps. I have to get deemed uninhabitable by you guys first. And then I can tear down my house. And if I were to rebuild, my first floor is going to be garage, front to back, side to side. That's not heated square feet. And then my two-story home can go on top, not a three-story home. But theoretically, I should still be in the same kind of footprint. But then if I go above that, well, that difference would be at the market value of it, and I can keep my $7,000, $8,000 tax bill.
Right. As long as you stay within 110% of the heated area, you're okay. And it doesn't matter whether you raise it up, or I had somebody that called and she said, when I told her about the 1,500 square feet, so she said, I can finish my garage and make it into a room. And I said, if you'd like to, sure. That's part of it. It's anything you want to do up to 1,500 square feet or 10%, 110% of your existing heated area.
A popular idea floating around is lifting your home with hydraulics on that. Does that affect your taxes?
No.
And for JC and Abby, do you see that being approved here with like the boring test and the soil test to figure out how we can lift our homes on Davis Islands? And
We do it now. As part of that assessment, if somebody wants to raise it, we do, depending on where you are, and geotechnical reports to determine what type of tile those could be. So that's just a part of the permitting process.
I'm just gonna say, I know, so Whit Reamer, who is our sustainability officer for the city, lives on the island. He's in a elevated home, and we have been struggling and discussing, jacking up your home and whether or not that's really the most viable option for you. Some companies may come along and say, you have a 1941 Rancher, and that's probably not the best thing for you to do. I mean, is it possible? Yes. Is it the best decision for you? I don't want to sit up here and say everybody should just raise their homes with jacks. I mean, that just probably isn't the best thing. I think it's a case-by-case analysis probably. And also cost analysis. We were looking at, and again, I mentioned we're only 28 days out from Milton, right? We are looking at applying for a FEMA grant. We know that it runs about, $100,000 to $150,000 to raise a home. And we were looking at applying to FEMA to see about getting a couple $1 million to see how many homes we could do. That's in process, but I don't,
that FEMA rep said on the webinar, it could be 3 years until we even see a grant, so we have to keep our home unfit.
I think what we would do is we would apply for the grant for the city, and then the city would administer the funds out, is where we're looking at going. We're talking with them about that now, but still, to find a company to do it, to do, the geotechnical to make sure that where you are is even feasible, and then what that looks like, what your home looks like now, if you just elevated it 10 feet in the air, it's a whole nother story kind of, but, is it possible? Yes. Is it the best choice for you? I think that's one you're going to have to kind of look at as you look at your choices in making your home more resilient.
All right, and last question for Pat, or two actually, sorry. If you're going to tear down and rebuild and we've been deemed uninhabitable, do you have to keep the existing foundation, or you can start from scratch because you're deemed uninhabitable?
Start from scratch.
Okay, if I fill out the form on the website to say that I'm uninhabitable for 30 days, how long is it till someone's reviewing it till I can get, is it a special letter that I can get that says that I can now tear down and rebuild up to 110%?
Those two things are exclusive. They're different things. The DR 465 is a rebate of taxes you pay for 2024. So what happens with that is we look on January 1 or as close as we can to January 1 and contact the individuals and say, have you made progress? Where are you at? And so on. And if you're not in the property, and if you have the choice between being in on December 30th or January 2nd, I would choose the second. Then you're uninhabitable, on January 1st. But what we'll do is check with that, and then we have an equation that we work out with the collector's office. So we calculate out the dollar amount of tax from the time of the event until the end of the year, and that's how they qualify the rebate check that you would receive.
Sure. So but the damage assessment form that we fill out to say that we've been damaged, we are uninhabitable for 30 days, so that we could tear down and rebuild and keep our homestead cat.
Right. That one, you don't have to say you're uninhabitable for 30 days. You just say it's uninhabitable, and here's what's happened. This is what our course of action is, and we'll just follow that. But as far as the decision whether you can tear down and rebuild and so forth, is not our decision. But once it happens, once that decision's made, then we will work with that and honor that as far as going forward. And again, the dollar amount is not what's important here. It's the size of the structure that you're putting back up. We know it's going to cost more, but the legislature has allowed us to say, okay, we're going to keep the cap the same until such time that you would transfer the property.
Okay?
I just have two quick questions about the tax refund form. First, where do we submit the form?
Back to us.
Do we bring it into your office, or is there a way to fill it?
Oh, no, just email it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then we'll have questions and answers here shortly. And we're going to power through here because in my mind we budgeted 30 minutes for those two presentations, and here we are an hour into it. So the next presenter, actually it's Chip. Yes. So Chip is the founder and president of Merlin Law Group. He's the original policyholders advocate, and he's actually written a book on what to do after you flood. One of my favorite one, after Superstorm Sandy, Tampa Bay Times called him the master of disaster, and someone else called him the Babe Ruth of hurricane lawyers. And he spoke at the Davis Island Yacht Club, and everyone loved what he had to say. So I'm excited to hear from you, Chip. Do you have any prepared remarks? You want to get right into the questions that we had for the event?
Maybe we can get just a couple. I've been doing this for a really long time now. This is all I've done my entire adult life. And there's a few people I see in the audience. And my sister got flooded out here on Davis Island. And I do sail out of the Davis Island Yacht Club as well. So I know a lot of people in the community. I'm sorry for everything you're going through. I keep thinking about if I was in your shoes, we're hearing all this stuff and you got flooded, how frustrating this must be. And I've been through, for a living, all I do is go where there are disasters when people are flooded out or blown away, avalanches, smoke, everything in the world that happens, earthquakes. I think the community will come back, but it's going to take typically a while. I really appreciate what you had to say. I think our tax assessor here does a great job trying to keep our taxes, property taxes down. It does come back to haunt you a little bit under our National Flood Insurance Program that is way behind the times. I've been very vocal about it for at least a decade. They haven't raised the National Flood Insurance coverage limit since 1994. And so most of you are way underinsured to really fix something. And if we had gone through and raised the ICC coverage up to $150,000, then you would have enough coverage and everything else to really be resilient, but that's not what's happening. But I want to just say I'm sorry for everything what you're going through. It's got to be really difficult, and be gentle with each other as we go through it. From a claim standpoint, because what I really do for a living most of the time has to do with collecting insurance proceeds for people all over. I've been through some devastating stuff. I was the insurance coverage counsel in the Champlain Towers that fell down, and I had to deal with all those families and all that. We collected $1.1 billion in 11 months, for those, and all from insurance, all insurance recovery, for them. And I represented the port of New Orleans after Katrina for them, and it took a long time, but they went from 25 million. They got attorneys for a year, then they hired us. 11 months later, everything seems to be 11 months. 135 million. For those of you who might be starting off with some insurance payments that are slow and wrong, I'm just telling you, sophisticated policyholders have had problems. The largest amount citizens ever paid, citizens property insurance, I think was for $90 million, but they first started out at $45 million, and that was from 2 hurricanes that hit in 2004. So I've been at this for a long time. The national flood insurance, for most of the people that have flood through FEMA, under either a write your own policy or a direct, you're probably just starting. I've heard some trickling in. How many people actually have their estimates back? A few. I'm just curious. I had one today. A gentleman thought, and it was an attorney. There's a second house out of. He lives out of Washington D.C. and he thought it was for certain to be the full 250 and all, and it came out at 220,000. He's upset, obviously, it's an excess policy that he hopes to collect another 300,000 on, but he's got to get the first 250, and they didn't get to that. Or is it really low?
137.
Yeah, and what the problem is that the pricing is just way too low, and they have these national flood insurance claims run like any other claims in the United States, because you're dealing with the federal government. It needs to be reformed as well too, which I've talked a lot about. I don't mean to dump on any politicians, but I think Kathy Castor needs to hear loud and clear that we need reform for the National Flood Insurance Project. I've been talking about it for a long time. That she's your local congressperson, and the 2 senators as well. Mr. Scott did not vote for reform beforehand, but maybe he'll have a different change of heart, because everybody on the West Coast has been really devastated by floods. So those are just starting to come back, and unfortunately, they're not coming about positive. And some storms, they come back great. After Hurricane Katrina, the National Flood Insurance adjusters were like the gentlemen in the red coats with the really long white beards, and they paid everything, and I couldn't believe them. And they paid and paid and paid, and everybody was taken care of. And it's kind of changed a little bit in Superstorm Sandy. You might remember they did a CBS 60 Minutes thing, and it was so bad, they ended up keeping the claims open for almost 3.5 years because there was so many difficulties with respect to people getting paid, and there was a number of people in those areas years after the fact that were having to be built up on stilts. So the questions that I get right now, the common questions, I'll just say, can you sell your property and still get paid? Yes, absolutely. Your damage is done. You got to document everything. You can sell to somebody else. You might get capped at what's called actual cash value, which is fair market value less depreciation. Even he was going to say that, and they were going to say that earlier, and that's really the formula that even they use for the determination of the 50% rule under the law. But you can sell your property and still collect. People are asking me that right and left. I hope that doesn't happen. I want everybody to rebuild. I think people ought to rebuild as resilient as you can. The truth of the matter is right now, the city of Tampa, love you guys, the most liberal in terms of just, here you go, here's your permit. My sister told me she got permits. I'm listening. Go get your permits. I'm surprised you got a permit. I'm all over the United States, and this is going to be tough. We might pay for it down the line, because there's no free lunch, guys. Everybody knows this. They're going to audit it. They're going to go back. Did we just give out right and left, permits and things like that? And down in Lee County, I represented a number of people, and they were, at one time the federal government said, we're just not going to guarantee any mortgages anymore. Good luck, And now what are you going to do? So, and we might face that here locally, just to be quite frank. I've been around, I've seen it all. So the local politicians want to be really good with you, and our city of Tampa is doing everything they can, for that. I think Bob Enriquez, because his taxes are so low, needs to go 120% times 50 to get to something even close to fair market value, because we have really low taxes. But what other I don't know what else I can answer right now.
Right,
because we're just really getting started on this, on the claims part.
People are just now starting to get their checks, and what's the best practice to dispute? When is the right time to bring in a public adjuster, or do you just say?
All right, here we go. If you're not getting paid everything you want, if you're not getting the 250 and things like that, because I've told a lot of people, just let's see what's going to happen here. And if what I'm seeing is coming back, Right now, you have 120 days to submit a proof of loss to the National Flood Insurance Program, which is way too short. They ought to at least extend it for a year. Maybe everybody could write their local congressperson like I am, asking her to, and everybody else to get it for a year, which they typically have done. Right now, it's only 120 days. What does that mean? That person they sent out to help you to go do the assessment is not, they're there just to assist you. You still have to fill out all this crazy paperwork, and you've got to get it exactly right. It is hard to get a national flood insurance program proof of loss done exactly right. I teach public adjusters how to do this, and they screw it up right and left. If you go to, there's only one Chip Merlin, you can put Chip Merlin blog, and I got instructions, but it's so difficult. You'll love this. The national government, in order to fully download it, you can't do it on Chrome, you can't do it on Edge, you have to go to Firefox to fully get it downloaded properly to submit the proper form. Most people don't submit the proper form. If you don't submit the proper form, you can't challenge what their belief is. If it's a national flood insurance issued policy. And what I'm talking about, you guys are shaking your heads, and I can just say you just don't even know. It's difficult. If you aren't getting paid what you're owed, now is probably the time to go hire a public adjuster. Because if you don't know what you're doing, how are you going to get it right? And I'm trying to teach the public adjusters how to do it right, and it's no easy task just to get them to do it right. And I'm not going to tell you my colleagues, Mark, you here? He's a public, put your hand up. God is my witness. I was telling him what's worse, you know? Here, doctors are way up here in terms of their competence. Lawyers doing flood insurance, they're way down here. Most of them don't know what the hell they're doing. My colleagues do not know what they're doing, and they're not going to do it right. At least I'm teaching the public adjusters what to do, and it's way up. You know, I hope to get them up somewhere close, okay? But it's hard to get these things right. If they aren't paying, you need a professional to do an estimate for you. You're going to have all these photographs that have to be included. Your estimates, it's got to be exacting, it's got to be right, it's got to be delivered within the 120 days. So now would be the time to do it, yes.
Everyone on Facebook says that their guy's the best. How do you distinguish who's actually
It's hard.
good?
Everybody says they're the best. I got
the
this
best.
whole thing right now about, be a contender, not a pretender, because there's so many pretenders on websites, and that goes for good for you, contractors. You can't trust the contractors going, are they licensed? They've been here in Tampa for long enough, or somewhere in Florida. If it was me, I'd be, how long have you been here? Have you been doing this before? You asked the question. Had the guy, the appraiser actually ever done a fair market appraisal under a FEMA floodplain before? Which is, there's only a few that have, because it doesn't come up every day. We haven't had this happen before. Great question, but you have to vet personally how to do it. I've got to, maybe I'll just, you know what I'll do? I'll put a blog out, because I write blog. If you go Chip Merlin blog and you just put Hurricane Helene, I've got all this information in the blog. I've done everything I can to help. But I will write, how do you pick a public adjuster? I've got it. I'll do it again for Hurricane Helene, what you asked for, who you look for, and where to go. Okay? And you should ask those questions. I helped start the the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters in 1993. There's some really good ones, and there's some really bad ones. Mark back there, I know his mother, who's an attorney, and I guarantee you he'll do a decent job. But my concern for you, quite frankly, you're going to get too busy. And you can't get too busy in this stuff. Even the good ones, I had an attorney from Texas call me. I would give you I'm afraid these guys are getting too busy. So you've got to pick your own. But trying to do this by yourself, with National Flood, get an estimate in, all the documentation you need. If you're not getting paid, I think you're crazy not to get help. I would go hire a public adjuster.
So on that is, so Jenny, who's got $137,000 offered from Flood, hires a public adjuster that gets the total $250. Are fees regulated where it's either 10%, I've heard 10%, I've heard 20% of the total claim, or is
I would
the difference?
Even the best public adjusters, hear me out. This is kind of a crazy thing to say. The public adjusters that tend to charge more than 10% tend to be not as good.
Yeah.
This is the craziest thing in the world to say. Who said yeah? It's true. The best always charge 10%, and sometimes less. But the guys that are new to it, that are greedy, that just seem to do this and don't, they tend to charge more. 10% is pretty, and
Is it on the total claim or the difference between the initial offer?
typically, so hear me out. So it would be 10% of the total claim, and it could be like if you already got most of it, like you got 137, they might charge it, but 15 for the new money, 10 for the less. They can do that. Okay? Yeah, that's a good question. This is a crazy thing. Now we're asking what the fees of public adjusters are.
Well, I mean, as a question that was submitted.
I
You
know.
I didn't need to dig in your pockets. I just wanted to ask what the people want to know.
It's one of the few times people have ever asked that, but it's a good question.
We're capped at 10%.
10% of the total amount, but you can charge a greater amount based upon what it is, if I'm not mistaken. We stop that?
State of emergency, 10%.
10% no matter what for a while. There you go, 10%.
How about that? See, answers always no unless you ask. All right, so selling and collecting. Can you expand upon that? Because there's a lot of people that are asking that if I buy the house and I sell it as is, should I get that flood money to repair that house? Why is it that it's in homeowner that sold the house?
It's an interesting question for the national flood, okay? So hear me out. If you have a national flood insurance policy, you can't assign the right to somebody else. It says it, and unlike state law that used to allow assignments, now we kind of don't, the national flood policy is not assignable. So the buyer can't just go take the policy and do it. If you have a private flood insurance policy, even with the change in the statute, it might be possible. Okay, but it'd have to be a private. And my daughter's got the private flood insurance. My sister has the national flood insurance. And as most people know what I'm talking about between the private and the. If you're stuck with the NFIP policy, you have to follow federal law. It is much more exacting. You've got to get it right. Private insurance is a little bit looser on it.
All right. And then I do want to get through the panelists so we get the question and answer. I have a feeling you're going to have a lot of questions from the audience. But I do want to ask you, is there any way to get homeowners insurance involved in a flood at some point to get some more pockets? Because I pay a lot of money for my homeowners, and they don't care about me in this situation because it was surge.
So everybody asked me this question. Look, guys, if all you got is flood damage, there's nothing else. You've got to read. You got to read your policy, but 99.9% of all the policies are going to. I would lead you down the primrose path. A lot of the last semblance of having a chance for that was after the 2005 Hurricane Katrina claims, and those got all shut down. You know, if it's purely flood and the floodwaters are coming up, you're really, wasting your time on most of it. I will say though that there were some in pocket areas, damage by wind. Unfortunately for Helene, as I recall, most of those had to do with falling trees and things like that, not necessarily, and it was just such a bad wind event. I mean, as a sailor, I just knew the long winds pointing in the wrong direction on those westerly things that it was just really, we have these backwards hurricanes that are just coming out, and if we go through them every year, if we get these winds in a certain area, like that was a major storm, we're just going to get these huge flood storm surges. We really, in the long term, got to think about what we can do to build our areas more resilient. I love that the term. The federal government's used it a lot, so because we got to get used to this because the physics aren't going to change. And that's just the way it is. But I should shut up and let's get on with it.
Well, I really thank you very much, Chip. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions for you here in a little bit. And what's frustrating is it felt like before Helene, a piece of dirt was a minimum $1 million on Davis Islands, and now there's a lot of homes being sold for a lot less than that. And it seems like every day there's inventory going on the market being sold as is. And so we're lucky that on our Civic Association we have Greg Wilkerson, who's not just on the retail side, homeowners, but also commercial and developers. Developed hundreds of thousands of square foot going through these type of situations and admitting these claims. So, Greg, do you have any prepared remarks, or do you want to go right into questions?
Thanks, John. So I'll keep it pretty quick. Just to give a quick introduction, my name is Greg Wilkerson. I'm the owner and founder of South Cedar Real Estate. More importantly, I'm a lifetime resident of Davis Islands. I just want to reiterate what everybody has said up here is that I can only imagine for the people who flooded what you're going through, and our heart goes out to you. And so, I prepared for this, I had comments, and now listening to what everybody said, I wanted to kind of reiterate and give some more tidbits as to how I would approach this from the perspective of I've been through the permitting process on countless numbers of projects, and no offense to the city of Tampa, but I know how frustrating it can be to go through and get stuck in that process. And so the first thing I would advise people is if you are going to go through the process of rebuilding your home and pull permits and you're getting stuck, go down to the office. Go down there, they have the office on Hannah Street. They have a great new process set up. I was there just a couple of weeks ago working on a commercial project. I was in and out of the door, resolved all of my questions in under 45 minutes. And sometimes it's just really hard to get people on the phone, especially right now when they are inundated with stuff. So that would be my first little tidbit there. I'm a dollars and cents person, very much. I think everybody here has talked about this DR 465 application. If you actually go to the Department of Revenue's website, they have a sample calculation of what your tax rebate potentially could be. I would employ everybody to take a look at it. It's not going to be exact, but it'll at least give you some sort of idea based on your timeline, based on what your current taxes are, of what your potential rebate could be. They're talking about contractors, especially for people that are going to rebuild on the island. I personally rebuilt on the island. I can tell you, as somebody mentioned here before, make sure you are selecting a contractor that is experienced, particularly on Davis Islands. There are some very unique nuances that you have to go through that a lot of builders, if they're coming from Valrico, if they're coming from Plant City, they may not know about. The FAA is a huge one. They can be a huge stickler for things, and they can really hold up a permit. I've seen them held up. A builder friend of mine that has done multiple projects on the island got held up for like 6 to 9 months because of the FAA. So make sure that you're using a guy like Ramon here who has done plenty of houses on the island and knows exactly how to navigate that process. And then lastly, on the idea of raising the level of your structure, raising the foundation, I think one of the things that is not talked about with this is what is your lender going to say if you have a loan on your house? That is a huge, huge issue. You are potentially going to trigger your loan covenants and go into technical default if you start making major renovations to the structural components of your home. So I will say that and caveat it with lenders don't want to be on the news for putting people in default during a catastrophic event, but do make sure you involve them in this process because that could be a technical default for you. I'll give it back to John.
Sure. So there's somebody here in the audience that submitted this question. I have an older home on a waterfront lot, and my house flooded with 3 feet. I don't have a mortgage or flood insurance. Should I sell my house now and move, or should I make repairs and chance it for a few more years? Because will the market be better? Do you have that crystal ball?
I think I'll defer back to anybody else. No, I think I would treat this question like the interest rate question that everybody thought that they had the crystal ball to over the last 9 months, and almost everybody was wrong. And I think that my perspective on it has been to go to people that I know in the Fort Myers area that were impacted during Ian, and their market came back in about 12 to 18 months. We have a residential side of our brokerage. We have been approached by a number of people as to whether or not they should sell. Our whole perspective on it has been we want to do everything we can do to help you get back into your house. It is no secret that every single day there is another lot that's going back onto the market, and we are now starting getting into the point where houses are trading and that information is becoming public. And I think the reality is right now, people are looking for discounts. Opportunistic developers, people that have been wanting to be on the island for years, they are seeing this as an opportunity. So there are situations where people are uninsured, they're older, and that is their only option. But if you can stay in your house, please try and do everything you can to get back in your house and don't sell now. I think Abby mentioned this before. We are 4 weeks removed from one of the worst storms of all time and 6 weeks removed from Helene. I think we have all been in an emotional state of shock, and now we are starting to make more pragmatic decisions, and that's how I would approach this. And people may not necessarily have that time, but if you do, we still live on probably the most desirable place in Tampa. People want to be here. That will never go away. I mean, if you look at the microeconomics of what happened in COVID, everybody was shocked for like 2 to 3 months, and then what happened right after? Values went right back up. So we are going to see a surplus of lots from people that have to move, are just done and ready to get on with their life, and that's fine if that's the decision they want to make. But if you can hold on, I would say please do. You will reap the benefits in the future of waiting this out.
Do you see us becoming the next Star Island, where the cheapest homes, $4 million, and every home is maxed out to full entitlements? Because if we have this opportunity where we can rebuild and keep part of our tax bill because of the generosity of the property appraisers, maybe we go build that 5,500 square foot house on our lot because the first 2,000 is capped and the insurance, live in it for a little while and then sell for millions and millions of dollars.
When do I get the yes/no questions?
Do you think that would be the case? I don't make the questions, I just read them.
Yeah, again, another crystal ball question I have no idea on.
Would you recommend tearing down and rebuilding the max entitlements? Because the bigger the house, the more you can sell?
Not necessarily. Everybody has their own unique position that they're in. I can't look at anybody and tell what their finances are and what they're capable of affording. If I'm looking at it from an investment standpoint, I would say I would try and build as big as you possibly can. If that's your strategy, that you want to sell a new home and make the most money. But that's not necessarily the strategy for everybody. I think that there are builders right now that are, I talked to Marilyn, Ramon's wife, about, maybe there's the potential for creating not just these big mega mansions to be built, and the opportunity now for some of these builders to think outside of the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot box, because the appetite for our community is there right now, and we also want to maintain the integrity and uniqueness of our community, and I think that's going to be there. So everybody has to look at the situation from an individualistic point of view. There's no correct or wrong answer when it comes to that.
Well, I think you provided the perfect segue to Ramon here. So Ramon and Marilyn, especially Marilyn, have become great friends of ours. They're advocates of Davis Islands. They own DICA Coffee, Homeworks. They built many, many beautiful homes on this island. And they're one of the builders, like Jerry here, as well as Bay Harbor Homes. They're ones that, builders that really care about it and not looking opportunistic. So, Ramon, do you have anything prepared that you want to say, or do you want to dive right into questions? All right, let's go to questions. So, the rumor is there's a lot of people asking builders now of, hey, I do want to do that max entitlement, but I can't. Let's do a joint venture with the builder. Have you been approached with that quite a bit lately?
We actually have. There's been a couple of folks that have mentioned that to us. And I think like any other builder, I think we would probably be interested in at least talking about it. But at the end of the day, there's, I think everybody in this room, I think that we all want the same thing, is to get back.
And Ramon, another thing is a lot of people are going through when we're trying to figure out if we want to rebuild, when it comes to square foot pricing and or whether you want to do a cost plus. Do you have any recommendations for the audience on how they should go about analyzing which one's better for them?
We build homes at cost plus. That's we do cost plus as a builder, as a private builder. We don't build that much on the island, but we have built on the island. I think it's something that you have to shaken here. I think that building on this island, rebuilding, is a good thing.
No, we appreciate that because I mean, that's something that's really important for John and I. I know we're going through that decision, but one thing we don't want to do unless we really have to is move off the island because of the community and people like you, everyone out here in this room today.
Like I said, we have builders that actually truly care about the island and want to see the best for the homeowners. When you're building a home, you got to get a great architect. And Alex Rios here is on the panel that when the email went out to the board members, almost every single board member recommended Alex Rios. Has a great reputation here. And let's turn the microphone over. You got the microphone. How about that? Do you have any prepared remarks that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I can just get started. Yeah, so Alex Rios, I'm born and raised here in Tampa. I started my practice 8 years ago and specifically focused on residential. We started off with builders, investors, developers, and over the last 4 years, we've been taking on more and more custom homes. So anything from single-family homes, spec homes, apartments, townhomes, and rezonings we handle. We've done just over 500 projects to date in the 8 years we've been in business. Speaking of Davis Islands. The biggest question I get is, can we build on top of our existing structure, and what are the rules and parameters around additions, around new construction? And the first thing we should probably talk about are some key terms. So there's your elevation certificate, your base flood elevation, freeboard, design flood elevation. So your elevation certificate is going to tell you where your home is now in relation to the FEMA flood maps. Your base flood elevation, when you go to the FEMA website, is going to be shown on their maps. So AE 9, AE 10. And the city of Tampa, as with many other jurisdictions, impose what's called a freeboard requirement. A freeboard is basically a factor of safety. It's an additional 1, 2, 3 feet above the base flood elevation. The city of Tampa, it's 1 foot. So you have your base flood elevation. Let's say your AE 9 flood zone. That establishes a 9-foot elevation. Your freeboard is 1, so your design flood elevation is 10, right? So that can give you a gauge of where you're using your elevation certificate. That can give you a gauge of where your house is now, and if you only need a few inches, or maybe you need several feet to get into compliance. When building on top of a structure, there's several factors. There's plenty of factors to consider. One, and JC, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe every property on Davis Island needs a geotechnical report. Is that fair to say? Okay. Are there any other areas that come to mind other than Davis Island that require that?
V zones. So any other V zones, but obviously the history of this was a spoils island. So therefore, obviously understanding that makeup there is what's going to trigger the geotech. But any V zones as well. So any coastal going up on Dandy, going up that way. Palmetto Beach, because that's VE as well. So any of those would also require geotech.
And just to speak on that, so you have your AE zones, which is your traditional flood zone property, VE zones, and as well as properties outside of the Lima line require, basically you have to account for wave action. So you're either on stilts or you have breakaway walls. So if you're considering building on top, you probably are going to scratch that idea if you're in the VE zone or past the Lima line. It's a black line with triangles on it when you look at on the FEMA flood maps. So that's probably step one: establishing where you are in elevation, using your elevation certificate, checking the FEMA flood maps, adding 1 foot to see where your design flood elevation is, getting your geotechnical report, and pairing that geotechnical report with the ultimate design intent, which is a 2-story building, a 3-story building, and seeing if piles will be required. So more often than not, you will likely need piles, but maybe your geotechnical report can will recommend a foundation that still will still allow shallow foundations. And if you are allowed shallow foundations, then you could potentially widen your footer. We can trench around the home, widen it, and usually we have to reinforce the bond beam at the top of the structure to then be built on top. My personal opinion is it's not much of a cost savings at the end of the day. It doesn't shout to be that it's a much of a cost savings compared to the loss of you building from scratch and building the home that you truly want. The only risk I see when doing that is many new homes have slab on grade structures. You have a 5-foot, 6-foot stem wall, which is completely fine. I completely get why you would want a slab on grade home. I don't think there's anything stopping FEMA from updating their map next year and potentially putting your home, maybe challenging the insurance. Insurance company may, have issues with that if a year later FEMA updates their maps or the Lemoore line moves and now you're in the VE zone or past the Lemoore line. So, that's probably the most common question we get with.
The reason why I think that's a common asked question is there's a thought process that if you leave a wall or two up, it's not new construction and it becomes more of an addition and a tax savings. Is that right, Pat? Maybe? No? All right then. All right, so I think Alex, thank you so much. That's very informative. I think now is the time you guys want to get all your questions answered here. Then look at all those hands. All right, well, I'm going to go to the lady that babysits my kids for free, Miss Linda.
I love his kids, all 4 of them. Okay, we talked a lot about homes and residential. I live on the island, have for 30 years. We also own a small apartment building on the island. We have no flood insurance because we can't get it. We don't even have wind insurance because we can't get that either. So we have property insurance, but we're pretty much uninsured for the hurricanes. So what can you offer us for tax relief? Because I read the postcard I got, and it talks about if the home is inhabitable. Well, multiple of our apartments are inhabitable. We've displaced the tenants. We're trying to remediate those with contractors. Y'all did charge us for 2 HVAC trade permits. How do I get that refunded? So what can you give us for tax relief? We've got a huge tax bill coming due, and I know that you've extended the 4% discount for an additional 30 days beyond November 30th. I don't know if y'all know that. But what else can we get?
When you look at the commercial properties, you're covered under the 50% FEMA rule. But the DR 465 is not applicable to multifamily residential. How many units do you have?
We have 4 units and 2 of them are uninhabitable right now.
Okay, then you can call our office and we can talk to you about the individual property. The break is at 9 units. Once it's over 9 units, then the 465 cannot be applied any longer. But as long as you have only the 4 units, give us a call.
Okay.
I think it might be
easy. I think there's a lot of apartments here on Davis Island, small ones that were affected this way, and it's going to be hard to provide any kind of affordable housing once we remediate. Thank you.
You can also let us know if you email it to us or call. We can. A lot of times, if you had a contractor pull something within the first couple of days after the storm, the free permit button wasn't on yet because we had to talk to the mayor about waiving those fees. So if you let us know if you've been charged, we'll get you your money back.
Okay.
If you guys want to create a line behind the tripod here, it's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. That way we can have the microphone that's connected to the Facebook Live here. All right, Ms. Christina, that's early bird gets the worm here.
All right. My question was, on your example letter about the 50% rule, it said the house was valued at $400, 50% was like $203. I'm trying to understand how that applies to that $63.45. So if you can go up to $203 in your example, but the house is 1,800 square feet, and you multiply that times 63, then I can only go up to 116. Am I reading this right? Okay, so it's a square footage deal plus a numbers game at the same time. So even though I technically have up to 200 because of my square footage and that low $60, I can only actually do 116 worth of work.
Yeah,
Because of the ICC.
You can also apply the 6485 too, right?
Right.
Because of your square footage, the 6485 caps out before you get to your 60%.
Your 200.
Yeah.
So then technically the next year, if I wanted to do windows and roof, then I would still have the difference between that 116 and that 200, using your example.
Yes, it depends how we work moving forward.
Okay.
Right? Because right now.
On the look back?
We're not looking back.
Okay.
right? So if we were looking back, yes, we're gonna have to figure out how long the state of emergency is gonna go for and what that means. But your way of thinking is right.
So
on.
essentially, instead of everybody looking at that letter, they need to take their square footage and multiply it times $63.
6485.
64,
yes.
yeah, okay, all right.
And then you'll know if
What you
I
can-
did every square foot in my house, this is what I would be at. If I had 1,000 square foot house, it's gonna be, the 6485.
Perfect.
So, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, I'm really overwhelmed. I'm trying to understand.
Oh, we gotta get it in line.
He's just following up on her question, I think.
But she only has enough square foot, we only charge you at the 6485. So times her current square footage, I'll run the numbers. real quick.
But a per contractor is telling her it's gonna cost $200.
That doesn't matter.
Whatever his quote is whatever his quote. We're
You're
always
only
safety on
using
that number.
6485, so if his quote comes out at a per square footage of 500 and something a square foot, it doesn't matter to us. We're charging you at the 6485 in terms of the 50%.
I think that's the one thing that's not communicated well, because the website, for me, I would have taken my number of 169 for my house, and I would have found somebody to do the work for under 169. And it's actually 169.
That's why we had this town hall here to get the good information out, right there.
Right.
That's what was happening, that's what I was trying to believe was happening in reverse, right? People do 50% or 60%
Two
start.
questions, but she may be covering. So the option through the website calculator is a private appraiser.
Or just that square footage. So
Right. And so is it 50 or 60%? Because I thought you said something about the city of Tampa uses 60.
Gotcha. Thank you.
One question that we're trying to get clarification on is the difference between the 50% and the 60%. Is the 60% with a private appraiser? Oh, go ahead.
60% is based on the depreciated value that is on the property appraiser's office. If you elect to use a private appraiser to come in and appraise your structure, remember, we're only used to appraisals when we're going to sell, right? And we want the appraisal to come in high so that the person who's financing, this is not a property appraisal. This is a structural appraisal. That's why I think the public adjuster and the other discussion was going on, because you're gonna get an appraiser to come in and appraise just your structure. So in the depreciated value, we should pull up a property on the flood info page to show you and put together all the BFE, the finished floor, all of that, 'cause it's all on our website, where it breaks that down. So if you are straight using the depreciated value as it's listed from the property appraiser, it is 60% of that value.
Well, when I run my numbers in the website, it calculates at 50%.
That's a different. That's the Hillsborough, so that's what we were saying is Hillsborough County, City of Tampa has a rule, Hillsborough County has a rule, Nellis has a rule, Sarasota, like every jurisdiction
Okay.
operates it differently.
So if we're in the city, it's 60%. Okay.
Yes, but if you choose to use a private appraiser, it goes down to the 50% because typically their numbers are gonna come in
Right.
higher than what the
Got
property
you.
appraiser.
Okay, that makes sense.
My other quick question is for Chip. I got a proof of loss statement from the adjuster that came with my NFIP flood insurance program. I can confirm, or like I can agree with that, or I can argue that it's low or whatever, but when I sign off on that, that's the proof of loss that I'm submitting. I don't have to submit a separate one like you're talking about that's very, very difficult. Yes or no?
Okay, so everybody, not necessarily everybody, but when you get your check from many of the write your own carriers, they're going to include, here's your check, and here's a proof of loss that we want you to sign. And if you swear to the federal government, this is what all your loss is, and you're all done, that's it. If that's really what you want to go do. Some people, that might be really good. You know, and this is where it's so difficult for me, because most of the time those amounts that they're going to pay you to begin with are low. I have clients, they're trying to keep away from having high amounts of repair so they can avoid 50%. And if you want to go do that, knock yourself out. But if you believe you're owed more money and you want to go get the more money, don't sign that proof of loss, because you're stuck. I mean, you've now sworn to the federal government, this is all you're asking for. And you should submit your own amount, whatever you think it is, for your own estimates with all the documentation like I explained to you.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Howdy, howdy. For you, Chip, again. We have been getting very conflicting advice about national flood insurance programs if we sell someone's house and they can still collect after they close. What is the answer?
So, if your house is flooded out,
yes.
If you've had damage, private or whatever.
No, not private. National.
Whatever, no matter what insurance it is, guys, you can sell your house the next day afterwards if you want to. They still owe you your money.
Okay.
But because you're not doing the replacement, they're only going to pay you the actual cash value of that amount because you haven't done the replacement. There's a difference between, in other words, I'm going to go fix something, and if I was to fix it, it's going to cost you $200,000. Actual cash value is I'll pay you to fix it less the depreciated amount, which might be, and they take 20, 15% off, something less. So you'll get stuck at that lesser amount. But I keep getting asked this question, but you absolutely can sell it. Someone said, I don't want to tell my insurance company that I'm selling my property.
No, that's
you
not
don't
what
have to tell them, but you can sell it. But
that's not what I'm worried about.
Are you trying to buy something?
Well, I sell a few properties. But
so you can't assign national flood insurance like the buyer.
Not asking that either.
Okay.
But the owner, they got flooded. They want to sell their property. They want to do it in a month. They don't have that whatever they got from the insurance company yet. When the insurance company will give them whatever they're offering them, and they can do that after the closing.
So yes, so my best advice for people who are going to sell, and they want to sell and they still collect their flood, is make certain that they completely document everything and get their own estimates. Typically, what you're telling me, and this is what I'm starting to find, is that the national flood guys are going to be 40% low. I'm going to take a guess. They could sell a property and go fight to get the other 40% more that they're already owed later on. But you have to have documentation to go back it up, and they need to file their own proof of loss exactly like I talked about as well. Okay?
Okay, 10-4. Thank you.
Hi, this is a question for the property appraiser. Clarifying question. So, you know, we're all snake bit and stunned by what happened, and it's going to take a long time to decide what to do. What the 5-year rule? How long do we have before we have to show some kind of permit application that we're under the 5-year rule? I'm not sure if that question's clear, but
you don't
is it
have,
2 years?
as long as you pull a permit to start construction within 5 years of the event, you're still good with your homestead.
So if I haven't done anything for 3 years, let's say,
ma'am.
I'm still okay.
Yes.
4 years, I'm okay.
Yes.
But I get to 5 years and 1 month, I'm not okay.
That's correct.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it 5 years from the date of the storm event?
Yes.
Okay.
So 5 years from the event.
Thank you.
All right, for the interest of time, after Jenny, we're going to cut off the questions here on it, and then I'm also going to show an example on the Hillsborough County website where you find that depreciated value and then the flood information on that. Go ahead, sir.
Fortunately, to some extent, I have flood insurance from the national program. But Mr. Merlin, you talked about the documenting it on this spreadsheet type of thing. And we had an adjuster come, and for the structure, he's filing the report. We haven't gotten anything other than an advance. He said the only thing we have to fill out is for the contents part. Is that what you were talking about?
So, hear me out. And this is where it all falls apart. The National Flood Insurance Program will send out adjusters that will help you out. Most adjusters with most insurance companies are supposed to do two things. Not just help evaluate the real property loss, but also help evaluate the contents loss. And so National Flood doesn't give you this big warning, Will Rogers, we're not doing anything on the contents at all. They're really letting that be up to you. And there is a proof of loss form and a worksheet that's available that if you go under NFIP and for the contents worksheet and start filling that out and putting it in. What we're finding though is that many of the flood adjusters will accept a written, that doesn't go to the NFIP deal, but if you have a list, and the more you're detailed on your list, and the more information you put on there, that they will pay on those contents, as well, but you've got to come up with those lists. What I'm talking about is her question, the woman that was up here that said, oh, they're like 50% low, 40% lower than what I thought I got to pay. What they're not saying to you is the National Flood Insurance Program is, and this is what the courts say, it's almost draconian. It is difficult to collect money from the federal government unless you completely conform and provide these proof of loss forms exactly right. Otherwise, you can't even contest this. So the first thing you have to do is go to their website and complete your own proof of loss forms to get it done right, with your own estimates, your own whatever be for both the real property as well as the contents, and have that submitted at least right now within 120 days.
So our adjuster gave us.
And so when you say your adjuster, you have to understand.
The one who came through our house.
This is the National Flood Insurance adjuster who's assisting you.
Right. I understand that. But
it's a big distinction because when you have your own private insurance with what Jimmy Petronas is talking about out there, it might be accurate. Jimmy Petronas can tell people, those adjusters, hey, this is your adjuster, he's supposed to be out there helping you and things like that. National Flood Jimmy Petronas has nothing to do with National Flood. What's not being said by the federal program is that by law, they're there only to assist you. It's your responsibility to get these things done properly. Okay?
But,
all right.
So what the adjuster did is he provided us with an email with the link for the spreadsheet for the contents.
Right.
He said he will be filing the report for the claim on the structure. And he looked at the size of our house and the improvements we had in it, and he said it's way over $250,000. So he said it'll take a couple of months because of the backlog before he actually files the full report, because he has hundreds of them to do. So are we only responsible then for the contents part? Because nobody told us anything about having to file a proof of loss for the structure.
So I'll say this one more time.
And there is some form out there for the structure itself?
There's a form for both the structure and the contents that should be filed at the same time. The law is you're responsible for getting it filed properly. If you're waiting for the National Flood Insurance Adjuster and them to get their amounts in, they might do it. I don't know what the amounts are. But if they're wrong, if they tell you something and they lie to you, it doesn't matter. You're responsible for getting your claim submitted to the federal government on time with the right forms. Period. That's the law. And so when people ask me that, all I have to do is take care of the contents.
Well, that's assuming the National Flood, and look, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, higher than that. They're gonna not take 2 months. Usually it takes about 3 to 5 weeks for people to get stuff back. I hope that's what happens here. 2 months is a pretty long time. What happens if they give you 50? You think, it's gonna be way over 250. Suppose it comes back, let's just make it up, 125. Now what are you gonna do?
Hey, now you're talking about my house, exactly.
Right, so it's 125?
I got it yesterday, 120.
I'm sorry for that, you know, for all I know, you have contractors going to tell you it's going to cost $350,000, and they're coming back at 125. Really? Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I have no idea on the house. There might be things that aren't covered. They had to take off because National Flood doesn't necessarily pay for everything depending upon what you've got, especially if it's already an elevated structure. If you don't have an elevated structure, though, most of the time they're going to pay for everything within the four corners. They should back to replacement cost. They figure out replacement cost, take some depreciation. It shouldn't be a lot. They should be paying for everything, period. But you know, I've written a lot and I've talked a lot about this. I'm just telling you, if I was in his shoes, you're a contractor. You can make your own estimates and fill it up. Most people out here can't do it. If it was me and I had to go do it, I'd hire a public adjuster myself to go get that estimate up, because that's what they're supposed to do for a living. And now they've proven to you the other way. What we're trying to do, and so everybody's here, hear me? We should be writing our congressperson and our senators asking for a whole year to get these forms done. In other words, and because a lot of the times people are going to start doing the construction. And what I've found is that the actual numbers that 6 months from now, 9 months from now, we're all done. It costs this amount. You give it to FEMA, they'll pay. But the problem is, if you only have, right now they're giving us only 120 days to fill out these forms. Why? Why not give an extension? And you could do a lot by at least asking for it, okay?
One quick announcement, the Facebook Live is about ready to die because my phone is about to die here. But if you found any value in this thing, make sure, if you think you got $50 worth of value, join DICA at DICA.join, something like that. I'll get to you the right one, but DICA would appreciate your membership here. All right, .org.
So my other question is for the property appraiser's office. Now, to get that refund, there has to be some documentation. So what's the nature of that document that we need if we're not getting a letter from our flood insurance right away or ever?
For the refund of property tax, all you have to do is, if you send in the evidence showing that the property's been damaged and so forth, then what we'll do is at the end of the year, we'll contact you again just to say, is this still, is it inhabitable or not? And then we'll make the adjustment from there. We probably won't need additional information.
So we don't need an official form or anything like that?
No, sir.
So,
we'll send somebody out if we want to look at it. But
now, for people who decide to move and buy another house and they porting the cap, one of my neighbors said something which may be erroneous, but I just wanted to double check. Basically, in our situation, we would only be able to port $500,000 because our cap is way over that, because we've been in this house for 50 years. So my neighbor said he saw something on some TV show that because of the flood, and if you do move, and you can port your whole cap and not be limited to the 500,000.
no, sir, that's not correct.
So maybe he was talking about that 5-year rule where you can keep the regular homestead.
That's possible, yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's why you don't trust neighbors. If you come to an event like this to hear from the experts, DICA.org.
What is a reasonable price per square foot that you should expect is a fair assessment coming from the FEMA program? As a cost, like I have 1,000 square feet that's affected. They should pay $70 a square foot, $100 a square foot, kind of just, and that's to the room. I mean, anyone who might have what would you have a sense of what a reasonable assessment would be for what they should pay out versus.
Now we get to ask the architect
It's-
really quick,
it's
because it
set.
depends upon the type of house and what you're gonna do to it, but generally, you can probably give, what's the construction cost per square foot?
Yeah, so this is over my head, I'm punting that to the builder at the end. But cost per square foot, your actual cost per square foot is maybe what I'm more used to, as far as I think your original question was what it was gonna be.
You know, just when you're trying to assess whether you're getting a fair deal from your assessor versus going out and hiring a private guy from the back or someone else. And the gentleman over here says, he's saying 40%.
So everybody's home, look, my sister Mary is walking back around there somewhere, and they just redid their home. And, I mean, didn't redo it long, redid their kitchen, it's beautiful, but before, it might have been worth, I don't know, $50 a square foot in the kitchen. They redid it. Chris, what would it be worth? $150, $200, I mean, it's a beautiful kitchen. Everybody's is different, so it depends on what you do. Do you have crown molding in there that got messed up at the bottom? Do you have a, I mean, I represented a woman in Palm Beach that had gold leaf sitting on the side of her stuff. I mean, I don't know. You know, and so you get general square feet. If I was to sit down there and tell you in Puerto Rico, people could rebuild things for $70 a square foot. You can't touch anything for around here close to that. You know, but even at the minimum amount. So you're asking, I can't tell you. Nobody can tell you unless you, that's why you need your own estimate to an extent. He just told me, really, is it really going to cost you $300,000, $350,000? And you think that when they come back at you for your amount, $125,000?
Yeah, right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I just got that email today. I mean, right.
And how many square feet?
1,355 square foot, Milton 59, you know, just down.
See, because their amounts are, the tax assessor amounts are just on a crazy amount, almost
Not
low.
going by that
You can't look at
whatsoever.
it.
Yes, I understand. I just
So-
meant like a reasonable idea
Yeah.
that.
In my house, it's $172 and $33 on the tax pressure. That's what my structural.
And that just, if you're close to the 50%, I will say this, you're really concerned, my advice would be to talk to a really good certified, because it's got to be a certified real estate appraiser, you know, about what the fair market value is, which is the cost to build new, less depreciation for yours actually is, as is. And that's something that they're just throwing numbers out. They aren't doing that independent assessment over and over and over again.
And then I guess back to the building department. So we have a 2-story house. The first floor was affected. Is the total amount of the house used for that calculation as far as what you can improve? Or do you limit it by the square footage of the affected area as far as that calculation?
Correct. We're not trying to overcharge that part. So only the part that you're affecting, that you are repairing, goes into that calculation.
So if it was 1,000 square feet.
1,000 times the 63, 64.
Gotcha. But I can use the whole value of the 2,000 square foot of the house for whether you're at that 50% rule.
The depreciated value is based on the total structure. The area of improvement is only what you are improving.
As long as you don't go over that.
So if it was
Gotcha.
1,000 each floor, and you're
And
only
that's
doing the
pretty much what it is.
And here's where you find it. So there's an example right here on the Hillsborough County properties. Look at the property search. You can take a look at the market value, the depreciated value. If you scroll down, there, up, there it was. And there's my depreciated value. So I can do up to 60% of that 333,619, and not have to worry about that. And so the heated area is 2364. I mean, probably my first floor is the only thing that's affected, so 1,500 feet. I'm well